All right. Thank you, Lewis. Quite interesting to hear the whole STL Language Cloud strategy, where you're heading with the products. I'm just curious, because clearly we got some questions that were being asked there about Language Cloud. We have a mixed audience in the room here. I just want to see some hands if that's possible. So who's here to see, or who's got a sort of language interest or language background in terms of adoption of STL technology, or your responsibility, your roles? Can I see some hands? Okay. Bunch of language interested people. What about Tridion sites or STL Web Tridion? Lots of Tridion sites. Hands, I see. By the way, for the STL people, you don't need to raise your hands, right? I know. Tridion Docs, Knowledge Center, live content, whatever you want to call it. Okay, that's a good mix. Other products, Contenta, maybe? Contenta? Anyone? Yeah, sort of. Okay. Well, it's good to see we have a healthy mix here. And that's actually one of the things we were also trying to accomplish today, is that even though there's breakouts, and of course you can go into depth about the specific products that you have, that we would also like to make sure there's a bit of cross-fertilization and people have a broader understanding of the mix of the products, because maybe there's something else in the portfolio that might actually be quite useful to you in your work, in your company. So that's one of the things we wanted to do today as well. Okay, from there, let me introduce myself. We started with the Belgian accent, then we had Lewis with the German accent. I'm here with a Dutch accent. I'm based in the Amsterdam office from STL. My name is Arjen van de Akker. I'm looking after product marketing for the STL Tridion portfolio. That's me. Now you might say, well, why was somebody in marketing on a developer day? Well, I started my own career a long time ago as a developer. Still have a lot of affinity with software and technology. But I sort of evolved from building software to talking about software. It's much easier, so that's why I chose this role. But I still know what technology is about. I know how complex it can get. I know that sometimes in the business you say, oh, that should be easy, and then if you ask a developer, it's 2 years of work. So I really understand that sort of tension between business requirements and the actual reality of building that software. I've been in the CMS space, content management space, since 2001. So I call it Celebrate, 18 years in CMS. I started for a UK-based vendor called Media Service, which was acquired by a company called Ulterion, which was acquired by a company called STL. So that's how I ended up here. It's still something you see a lot in the CMS space, lots of acquisitions, private equity buying companies. So still a lot of things happening in that space. But it's been quite an exciting ride. And well, here I am at STL, enjoying my job here very much. A little bit about myself. Like I said, moved from technology more into product marketing. In my free time, I like to do some yoga to balance out my work with well, staying healthy and sane. I'm a hobby photographer. 2 years ago, I sold all my Nikon stuff, my DSLR stuff, bought Micro Four Thirds. So I'm still very much into also looking into technology, changing out my stuff, and buying myself some new interesting gear every now and then. So what I'll cover here this morning, I've already sort of seen a bunch of hands, but we're talking about two things coming together here basically, because a lot of you, like we just saw, have a Tridion Sites background, a whole lot of people here with the Tridion Docs interest, but from an STL perspective, we see there's more and more crossover between the two. And I would like to explain to you what is that crossover, what is the use case that we see, and how is it going to also impact you as a user of the product. So you're coming from either one of those two domains, right? So what are the market drivers that sort of make us rethink the Tridion portfolio? I mean, it's only 2 years ago that we brought together the two under one brand. I mean, for those of you especially on the Tridion Doc side of the house, you know we've gone through quite a few rebrands. But we landed, I think, in a really good place. And the Tridion portfolio as a whole, there's more and more crossover between the products. From a technology perspective, you will see that they start to converge. And I want to talk about some of the drivers behind those decisions there. So what is STL's response and what are we doing moving forward? And then hopefully, if I watch the clock, we'll have some time for Q&A. I'll keep my clock open here. So Tridion Sites, does this look familiar to someone? Probably it does. It's just a screenshot from our technical documentation. So those of you who've been working on the Tridion product for years, this should look very familiar. With recent versions, some of this has clearly changed. You'll hear a lot about the integration framework later today that was launched as part of Tridion Sites 9.1. There's still a lot of really good innovation happening here. One of the other parts is, of course, the delivery for STL Tridion Sites. A lot of good changes there towards GraphQL-based delivery, content mashups between Tridion Sites and Tridion Docs. But this should look familiar to Tridion Sites, folks, I hope. If not, it's on docs.stl.com. Tridion Docs is just, again, a bit of a random screenshot from the documentation. Content Manager, it says collaborative review there, but we're going to talk a lot about draft space and review space over the next 2 days. So by all means, make sure you don't miss out on that piece as well. But these are sort of two systems, content management systems, that have a lot in common, but yet also they're quite different in the sort of content that you manage. But if you think about what both of these systems are doing, you manage content, you author content, you publish content. That's basically what you do with both Tridion Sites and Docs. So from our perspective, there was also a thinking about, okay, I mean, yes, we have multiple CMSs in our portfolio, like you heard from Lewis, we have multiple TMSs in our portfolio. Is that the right strategy? Where do we want to move with these content management products moving forward? And when we think about that, of course, we should not just look at the market, at the technology perspective, but also what are the customers doing with these technologies and what are the sort of market drivers on which we should base our decisions. So one of the key things that we've seen here, I mean, over the last couple of years, everything is about customer experience, right? And at one end, it's a bit of a marketing hype, but at the same time, a lot of companies are trying to digitally transform themselves in support of better customer experiences. And if you think about a customer experience, we're not just talking about buying something, it's also about adopting a product or a service, using it. So what you see here is basically, let's say, the full customer life cycle. From you're interested in a product, at some point you buy it, then you start using it, you adopt it, and then at some point, from a company perspective, maybe this is a good customer, you would like to upsell or cross-sell products or services to them. So this is the whole customer life cycle. It starts here with attracting people. At some point, of course, you need to make sure they're happy and hopefully they become a loyal advocate for your product or service. There's a more simplistic way of depicting this. It's called the get, keep, grow model. There's different ways. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different models. You can say it's acquire, it's about conversion, it's about retention. Different words to say the same thing. The interesting part, of course, is that content plays a significant role across the entire customer life cycle. And content can be used in a lot of different places and ways, of course, because you can think about, well, maybe that is the content on your website. Maybe it's the content in your support portal, if you think about the later phase where people need to have access to in-depth product information. Maybe it's the content in your commerce environment. But it's not just public-facing websites, because especially if you look at how Tridion Docs is being deployed, it's very much also for internal use cases, to educate field engineers or sales engineers, maybe sales. I mean, if you're deploying Tridion Docs more in, let's say, a financial services environment, it might be to educate your salespeople or people on the help desk, or there's a whole bunch of different use cases, but content plays a pivotal role for all of those people, whether it's intranet type environments, or printed manuals, or extranets for partners, or actually the public-facing websites. All of these things are highly sort of driven through content. Content that needs to be managed, that needs to be verified, what needs to be authored in the first place. Probably it needs to be translated as well. It's where the link with the translation management comes in, of course. And ultimately it needs to be published to the recipient. Well, a lot of companies these days are also looking into how can we sort of extract more value from our customers. So they're looking at something called customer lifetime value. And the whole rationale here is that if you want to acquire a new customer, that's really, really hard these days. It's expensive. And the sort of commonly adopted statistics is that it's 5 times more expensive to acquire a customer than to retain a customer. And if that's the case, then this whole part of the customer life cycle suddenly becomes very, very important to every business. So yes, you still need to acquire new customers, but how do you keep them on board? How do you make sure they have access to the right information? How do you make sure they can self-serve 24/7 instead of having to pick up the phone and ending up in a queue for 30 minutes before they can speak to an agent? So this whole part is really something that a lot of companies are looking into. How can we optimize that keep phase and then ultimately grow our relationship with that customer? Now, what does that mean in terms of our content management portfolio, and how does it sort of drive our strategy? What we see is that a lot of 3D Insights customers, yes, they manage their websites, but there's more and more interest to provide customers with in-depth product information, and not necessarily locked up in a support menu somewhere, and then you go in there and it's a completely separate experience, and you probably need to look and do a search for the same product that you were just looking on the regular website. And ultimately you get 200 search results, and maybe somewhere there's a PDF that you need to download to find the answer. That's not really a great customer experience, right? There are much better ways to expose in-depth product information in an online fashion instead of just publishing PDFs. Here's a good example. This is actually something we've built in our own demo environment. So over the next 2 days, there's the Innovation Center here. It's where you can see demos, you can talk to our pre-sales folks, etc. And they've done a great job at building a demonstration where you can see the value of bringing product information into a, let's say, web environment. And not as a PDF, but really, embedded in the actual web content. And here's an example of a use case, demonstration website, where you would like to be able to do so. So in this case, this is a fictitious company that is selling solar panels. So of course, if you go to a website of a company like that, you wouldn't have, pictures, you would have some marketing related content about the value and the benefits of solar panels, etc. But then if you scroll down, this is still some marketing content, you can buy it. So mixing the marketing content with the ability to buy stuff, clearly that is important for either the product or accessories or things like that. But you see what we've done here, there's also technical information on the very same page. You don't have to go download the datasheet, you don't have to go into the support area of the website. Here you've got electrical data, performance data, all kind of technical stuff that would normally sit in a Tridion Docs type of publication. That information would sit there, and we can now expose it on the very same website. So technology-wise, the same APIs can serve up web content from 3D Insights, and they can serve up technical content from Tridion Docs. And even further down, installation instructions, knowledge base articles, and still, you can still download documents. Of course, you can still publish to PDF, and if people want to download to PDF, perfectly fine. But you see, this is a much more compelling way of engaging with a customer that wants to maybe orient themselves. Am I going to buy this product in the first place? And then the product information can actually play a role in the acquisition phase, where you have to still get that customer on board. At the same time, of course, if I have a problem, I can go to the same website, I look up my product, and I have immediate access to all the in-depth product information. So that's one thing that we saw happening. The other part is that at the same time, we see Tridion Docs customers become more and more web-centric in their approach. So where traditionally they've been publishing to print, probably DTP process, and they've been publishing to PDF, a lot of them are now going into more web-oriented publishing. Great example, one of our customers, NetApp. I'm not sure, are they in the room here? Okay, I hope you don't mind I stole this example, because I think you're doing a fabulous job here with Tridion Docs. Yeah, take a picture, that's fine. I'll give you a copy of the deck, right? But again, here you see really good in-depth product information, all web-centric. Clearly this is great for customers. They can just very quickly go browse. They don't have to download the PDF. Yes, it's still there, or download the EPUB, but it's all online. But at the same time, of course, this is great for search engine optimization, because you've got a ton of content under your URLs. That is all indexed by search engines. So at the same time, it's really good for search engine optimization, which should resonate with the marketers in your company. So all online. And then the third sort of angle is, okay, we've talked about web content, 3D Insights, technical content, or in-depth product information. It doesn't necessarily need to be technical. In financial services, it could be policies, procedures, guidelines, that kind of thing, but still it's highly structured information. The third piece is that people want consistent localization. Again, I used the same brand here. So this is the technical website, all nicely translated, but your marketing content needs to be translated as well. And ideally, you would not translate something twice in 2 different places or using 2 different systems if you're one and the same brand and you're talking about the same types of products. Even though it's marketing speak and it's technical speak, it still makes a lot of sense to share your translation memories, make sure you use the same terminology, etc., and bring all these things together. So, there you go. How do we respond to that? And I've sort of given most of it away already by talking through it. But that's why we came up with Tridion DX. And Tridion DX is actually a sort of bringing or the coming together of Tridion sites, Tridion docs, and our translation technology into one cohesive platform that you can use to drive customer experience throughout the entire customer lifecycle. Get customers, keep customers, grow customers in any language at scale. So if I go to a sort of one-slide summary of what it is trying to accomplish, is Tridion Sites is still serving the needs of, let's say, marketers, those who write content to mostly acquire customers. Whereas Tridion Docs is more the one for technical writers, subject matter experts, technical content, in-depth product information, service-related content, etc. And these continue to require their own dedicated authoring environments because editing data content is quite different from editing web content. So the authoring environments, you see, they continue to be separate. The language integration is shared across the two because, like I just explained, you want to have consistent localization across any type of information, whether that's technical, marketing facing, customer partner facing, doesn't really matter. And then at the delivery side of things, we can bring it together in one and the same experience. So you still have your documentation, you have your websites, but basically all content is exposed through a common set of APIs. You can deliver content in a headless fashion, meaning it can go to any touch point, it can go to your mobile app, it can go to patient-connected healthcare apps, it can go anywhere. But clearly there's still the ability to publish to straightforward regular websites as well. But it's API first, headless delivery. And then the use cases, it's not just about websites. It's also very much, we see a lot of companies reconsidering what do we need to do with SharePoint for our intranet. Do we want to keep SharePoint? Do we do something else? And actually quite a few of our customers are reconsidering to use a proper web content management system like they used 10 or 15 years ago already before SharePoint sort of conquered the world to build an intranet. And especially if you want to bring together information from various systems, I think there's a really good use case to use this as a foundation for a solid intranet to serve up customers, to serve up information to partners, to your intermediaries, whoever they may be, and of course ultimately also to customers. So internal, partner and external use cases are all supported through this platform. Does that make sense? this is in a nutshell what we're trying to accomplish with Tridion DX. Thanks to the video team, by the way, for creating this great video. So in summary again, sites customers, more need for in-depth product information. Tridion Docs customers, more web-oriented. Everybody wants localization. But now how do you bring together Tridion Sites content and Tridion Docs content in a dynamic way? In a way where you don't have to do it all manually and sort of connect a certain piece of documentation or product information with a certain piece of content on your website. That's where taxonomy plays a very, very important role. And that's the sort of concluding session here of this deck. And this will be covered in more detail by Ben Middleton this afternoon in one of the sessions. But I mean, we're techies here, right? So this shouldn't scare you guys. What you see here is basically the publishing model for Tridion and how we bring together Tridion Sites and Tridion Docs content in a dynamic way. So if you look at Tridion Sites here, traditionally, Tridion Sites has always had the ability to manage taxonomies. Tridion Docs doesn't have built-in taxonomy management, but you can plug in any external taxonomy provider. So a lot of you are probably using a product like SmartLogic or something else. But there's also a way to expose Tridion Sites taxonomies into Tridion Docs. So what you can do here through this integration of the taxonomy capabilities, you can actually publish content through the dynamic experience delivery stack, which is our new delivery environment with the GraphQL-based APIs, etc. And then publish into your web application or wherever it may go. And the taxonomy is actually the thing that can dynamically bring together certain Tridion Docs pieces of information and certain Tridion Sites information on one and the same website. So if you think about a very simple use case where you have products and SKUs, you can say, well, the SKU is actually the thing that matches the Tridion Sites marketing content with the in-depth product information. But it really depends on the sort of taxonomy you're using and what sort of metadata and taxonomy classification system you are using to classify your content against. But taxonomies are a really good and solid way to dynamically assemble different types of information here on a web page. The cool part here is you see Tridion Sites and Tridion Docs content going into delivery stack, but you may actually ingest third-party information as well into that same environment. So it doesn't just need to be Tridion Sites or Docs content, it can be content from other third-party repositories, backend systems, and more of that is covered also in the integration framework story today. And that means it can be a content mashup that comes, that sort of uses content from a lot of different backend repositories. This is the cool demo that you will also be able to see at the Innovation Center if you're interested. And then the last one, this is sort of trying to bring it all together in a architecture. Again, this is not a detailed technical diagram, but really what we're trying to do with the combined Tridion DX offering is say, okay, we bring together web content, unstructured, although Tridion Sites is XML-based structured content as well, but more marketing content with in-depth product information. There's a layer of contextual relevance because you can personalize this content now because it goes through the same online delivery stack. So you can make it relevant to what is somebody trying to do, what device are they on, etc. There's a shared search across both, and then there's the actual delivery. It's all connected to our language cloud, so you can get consistent translation across both your web content and your in-depth product information. And it's all surrounded by a whole ecosystem of connectors and integrations to expose it to third-party systems, to ingest content from third-party systems, to feed translations back and forth, etc. So both for content, data, and also the transactional element. So this is the high-level architecture of Tridion DX. I hope by showing this, you sort of, we are better able to articulate why we are seeing that these products are coming closer together and what the actual business drivers and also business benefits are that you can benefit from by adopting the joined-up technology stack.